Everything's under control. Situation normal.
What happened?
Had a slight weapons malfunction, but everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. You may have heard that the Star Wars Han Solo movie just fired its directors. Lucasfilm literally said, "You're out," with 3 weeks to go on the film. So I'll explain what's going on. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get everything. There's going to be a bunch of Star Wars dropping in the next month because of D23. But if you didn't think they were going to be bringing some really awesome footage, then based on the debacle that happened yesterday, they're going to try and do everything they can to make you forget that something bad just happened and you're worried about a Star Wars movie. Now, people are always worried about Star Wars movies for really stupid reasons, but if you don't know what happened, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, two really idiosyncratic but really amazing writer-directors, were hired to do the Han Solo movie. They announced the movie last year, they announced the cast, everything seemed good. They started shooting earlier this year, so they've been shooting all year up to this point. They had about 3 weeks left to go, principal photography, and all of a sudden, boom, it just blows up in their face. They're outright fired. Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy announced a statement. They announced a statement that our creative visions have not aligned with our partners, so we're choosing to part ways. Most of you instantly realize that that's the nice way of saying that somebody quit or somebody got fired big time. And the biggest surprise isn't so much that people got fired. People get fired from movies all the time. People get fired from the Star Wars franchise all the time. Remember when Josh Trank was going to do Rogue One right after Fantastic Four came out? They just mysteriously announced that they parted ways with him before they started shooting Rogue One. Gareth Edwards came on. But the key reason that people are citing from behind the scenes, and this is all anecdotal because people are saying sources revealed behind the scenes tension between Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, Lawrence Kasdan, who's another big producer in the Star Wars universe, and the directors. So apparently, Kathleen Kennedy and the other Star Wars people, like the corporate people, felt like the movie that Lord and Miller were making wasn't Star Wars-y enough. So I know that sounds weird, but you have to remember that these are the people most known for doing the Lego movie, for doing 21, 22 Jump Street, as well as a lot of weird TV projects like Last Man Standing. So they do a lot of comedy, they do a lot of weird idiosyncratic things. So there's a lot of conjecture about what was happening on set. But suffice to say, the Star Wars people were not happy with what was happening in the footage that they were seeing. So they wanted to do a bunch of reshoots, but the directors stuck their foot in the ground and say, "Hey, this is our movie. You said that we would have control. We're going to make the movie that you hired us to make." And the problem with that is that Star Wars, the other big franchises like Marvel, Kevin Feige, they don't like it when directors do stuff like that. Like, it's always good to stand your ground. Patty Jenkins had to stand her ground to get that No Man's Land scene for Wonder Woman left in the film. The Warner Brothers people wanted to pull that out of the film. They're like, "You don't need that, it's pointless." But it turned out to be one of the best parts of the film. So sometimes directors standing their ground when studios want to cut big things out of the movie is good. But apparently on the Han Solo set, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and their personalities were clashing the whole time. From day one, it was just not a good marriage of directors and studio. So what probably happened is that Kathleen Kennedy, the studio people, wanted to bring in a director who would finish the project and make it look the way they wanted it to look, rather than bring them a really good film that wasn't necessarily what they thought of as a Star Wars film. So you have the directors that are trying to uphold their creative vision that they felt like they were hired to do, and you have the studio that's trying to protect its multi-billion-dollar franchise. We don't want a quirky Han Solo movie. We want a Han Solo movie that everybody's gonna like. And you can understand why a studio would want that. Even though in this situation, I think the directors were right to stand up for their vision. Even if it wasn't going to be a traditional Star Wars film, sometimes you get really interesting things when you pick really interesting directors. In the criticism that most people are labeling on Lucasfilm is that if you hired idiosyncratic directors, then why were you so surprised when they gave you that kind of movie? But that's just the reality of studio filmmaking. It happened to Edgar Wright on the Ant-Man movie. He quit the movie after Kevin Feige brought in a bunch of other writers to change a bunch of scenes, change his script, and Edgar Wright said, "This isn't the movie that I made anymore. You've changed it so much that it isn't something that I want to put my name on." So that was different. He did not get fired from Ant-Man. He chose to leave. They say that Phil Lord and Chris Miller didn't want to leave the Han Solo movie. They were forcibly kicked out, like boom, by the seat of the pants. They've since released some more statements where they're like, yeah, we hate to use that term, creative differences, but in this instance, it's actually pretty accurate. We were not making the movie they wanted us to make. We had something different in mind. Ultimately, they need to protect their brand, so it's totally understandable that they got fired. Junkie XL just got fired from the Justice League movie. He was going to score it. Now they're bringing in Danny Elfman, so people get fired from big $150 million franchise movies all the time. When that much money's on the line, studios get very paranoid. But now there's 3 weeks left of principal photography. They have all the reshoots that they want to do in addition to that. So Kathleen Kennedy said we'll announce a new director very soon. So that means in the next week or so. Right now, the leading candidate they're talking about is Ron Howard. So you can see what they're doing. They're bringing in somebody who has a lot of experience with big franchises who will do what the studio says. Like, you're being brought in to clean up a mess. Please clean it up in the way that we ask you to and be on your way. What's going to happen next is they'll shut production down for a couple weeks while the new director comes in, figures out what stuff they already have, what they need to reshoot, and how they need to re-edit the film. Because they've been shooting all year, so they've been editing as they go. So just like Edgar Wright's Ant-Man got completely changed, but there were like a few little bits of it that they left in there, the same thing will probably happen with Han Solo. There'll be a lot of Phil Lord, Chris Miller stuff in there, but it won't look anything like the original film that they'd intended to make. Silver lining though, now that they got fired from Star Wars, Lord and Miller are free to come back to the Flash movie, which has had problems finding writers and directors. They originally turned out a draft of that script. They were on board to do the movie. Then they got hired to do Star Wars. So they're like, okay, Star Wars is definitely happening tomorrow. We want to do a Star Wars movie. Turns out didn't end up going so well. So now maybe they'll come back to the Flash movie. So who knows? The Justice League Joss Whedon situation is a little bit different. Circumstances weren't that dire. They were getting ready to do their reshoots. So Zack Snyder had to leave for family reasons. Joss Whedon was brought in to sort of just usher it right over the finish line. Just a few more scenes to collaborate on, and then the editing, and that's it. Like, the film was pretty much already done when Joss Whedon came in. So because D23 is happening in a couple weeks, it's not even that far off. It's happening in the middle of July. They're going to be dropping a whole bunch of Disney-related things like Marvel trailers, Star Wars trailers. They are probably going to try and crank out something really awesome so that you forget all about this stuff. Think about how scary it would be for Star Wars if they turned out a Han Solo movie that fans didn't like. It would be a bloodbath. There are already people that are worried about Episode 9 because Colin Trevorrow, who's directing it, just turned out a film called Book of Henry that was terribly received. People thought it was hot garbage, so now they're like, oh my god, what does this mean about Episode 9? Just to be clear, I don't think there's any reason to be worried about Episode 9. If they're this hardcore about a spin-off Han Solo movie, think about how hardcore Lucasfilm is about their saga films. But let me know what you guys think about this. I think it's just so shocking because it's such a high-profile brand and we're heading into Episode 8. It's literally a couple months away. But what's going to happen next is there'll be some more Game of Thrones. They announced a Watchmen TV series is being developed at HBO for the next couple years. We probably won't see it till 2019 at least. And they just announced a whole bunch more stuff about the Spider-Verse and the Spider-Man franchise. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, so I'll try and post everything as fast as possible. While you wait for that, click here to rewatch the Game of Thrones trailer I just posted, and you can click here for all my Star Wars videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.